Praise the Lord. Uh, God has ways to show you things sometimes that only He could show you and let you understand what it really means. And me and my twin brother went on a 21-day fast and just water. And during that time, the Lord gave me a spiritual dream that when I woke up from the dream, I also had the interpretation of it. And the dream was this, was that I saw me and my twin brother running through a field. And that field there was in color, everything was beautiful. And we had on overalls, both of us had on overalls. And I know I was raised up on a farm, what overalls are. We wear them as little kids and stuff. And but in this dream, one side was not snapped. One side was and one side wasn't. And when I had the dream, the interpretation was this: we're to move back up to Smith County, back to our home around Smith County up there. And so we did. We moved back up there in my mom and dad's old house that they had. And so when we moved up there, David all of a sudden he said, we we went up there and he didn't come. So he started looking for a place, and David talked about having a studio maybe there in Taylorsville. And we looked at some places there, an old theater. We might thought about having it. We had a guy that built studios come down and look at it, and he said, no, it's not a good idea. It costs too much money to do that. So we ended up building a brand new studio up in the country. And during this time we were Word Records, and so we were traveling a whole lot. And so as we stayed up there, we decided just to have some meetings. And so we met in this trailer. And then we met in this little trailer, and all of a sudden there was so many people coming to the little trailer, we outgrew it. So we moved to another little place, and it was my Aunt Merlin Faye's house. And so moved there, and it filled up, and it was people out on the porch. There was so many people coming to those Bible studies. And so from there, we decided to build a small building. So Sister Virginia, Virginia Bat. Her husband donated some land to us for the church, and so we built a little building, but and it wasn't long that it was packed out with people, and we was having such a great move of God up there, and so we had a school also in there, and so after that. We started praying about another building. So through that, we ended up building another building, which is seats about probably maybe 500 people, something like that. And so I'm not good at numbers. I don't want to be evangelistic. Say it was 1,000 people there, 400. But we'd say to the people, we'd have a prayer meeting, and I'd say, yeah. How you like the building out there? And those guys would look out the window and say, I don't see no building. I said, well, Claiborne say, you have to see it in faith. You got to see that building in faith. So by faith, we had it built, and just in a short time, it was paid for. God really was blessing us up there in a great way. And, God works in mysterious ways. He moves you in different directions in ways you're not even thinking about. Then all of a sudden, God opens up doors and He shuts doors. And so I'd like for my twin brother to share some things after he got up there, and some things that happened in both our lives, because it was a place of change. All that would come to pass about the overalls was one latch, and thank God that only one latch was holding together, because we would be still in chicken houses today, but God brought us out of that. There's Claiborne.
I'd like to say, whenever Rayborn made that commitment not to marry, but to the dream that he had, back then we had just come to the Lord, so I knew that he would need the strength to do that. So I made a commitment not to marry also. So for 14 years, I didn't date. I didn't. We didn't get married to nobody. We just we were married to the Lord. But then later on, I had a dream that the Lord was giving was releasing me. It was like some papers. He was giving me some papers, release papers, and so I understood that God. And at this time, I was really getting miserable. I really was feeling the desire. I really wanted a wife, and I really wanted children, and so it amazed me when I had that dream that God was that merciful and God is that caring that He let me understand that commitment was only for 14 years, long 14 years. But anyway, I was looking for a wife. I was thinking about who's going to be my wife. But anyway, it was a lady that was working for with the David the Giants, and her daughter was at the church, going to church with us, and so I'd seen her there, and I knew them real well, but I didn't think anything about their daughter to be my wife. But her mother let me know that she had already talked to her mother. Sissy's my wife, Sissy. She talked to her mother and dad that she wanted to. She felt like that we were to get married, and she'd already felt that. And so anyway, I started praying in that direction, if that's God's will. And then I talked to her at church, and I said, and then I mentioned about coming to see her, and she said, and they were going to have supper for me, and I could go down and eat supper with her. But anyway, the night before I went, I prayed. I said, God, is this your will for my life? And that same night, he gave me a dream, and he spoke to me in that dream. And he said, it was a scripture. He said, how much more would your Heavenly Father give good things to those that love Him? And I woke up with that word, and then I knew that God gave me that word, that was to be my wife. So when I went down to have supper with her, and I don't recommend this to nobody that goes out with somebody, but the same night that we went down there, we had supper. Then I asked her, did we go drive somewhere? And I started talking to her. And I asked her that same night, I said, why don't you set a date for us to get married? And we were traveling a lot then, so I let her know the dates that we could get married. I don't think I asked her to marry me. I think I just said, why don't we set the dates? So I don't recommend anybody to do that. But anyway, we got married at that small little church building before we moved into the bigger one. And so we didn't. It was 1 year later that I had a son. And we had a son, me and Sissy, and we named him Clay Spencer Huff. But I had a dream before that I saw his name written in lights, and it said Clay. So we didn't have a signing ground for Clay. We just I kept saying Clay's on the way, and I believed that God had given me already given me his name. But I didn't name him Spencer. Sissy named him Spencer, but I named him Clay. Well, I didn't. The Lord did. He showed me his name in lights, Clay. And then Sissy named him Spencer, and so that's how we named him. And then 3 years later, Sissy was going to have a baby again. This time we had a signing ground. We went into I went in there with her, and they started giving her showing the baby. And that lady said, there's one, there's two. And by then I was sitting down, there's three. So then we found out later that it was girls, all girls. And then I went to the car and sat down, and I prayed, meditating on the Lord. And he gave me their names. So I named them Faith, Hope, and Charity. Those are triplets. And then 3 years later, a lot of people would stop by then, but not us. I told her I feel like there's another child. And so anyway, we went to the smaller hospital this time. This lady that we knew, she was a nurse there. And our sissy, when she was getting ready to have the baby, the doctor was not there. He was out of town or something, and her blood was a little bit low. Her blood was low. So they took her to Hattiesburg. It was a bit to where they, and so I followed the ambulance there to the, and then I went into the room when she's gonna have the baby. And when the baby was born, that's the first time I ever seen the doctor. That's the first time we ever met him. And so it was a girl, and he picked the baby up and he gave her to me, and he said, "What's her name?" I said, "Her name is Joy." He said, "Joy?" He said, "Where's Faith, Hope, and Charity?" I said, "Oh, they're home." He didn't know that we had triplets, but he told my wife later that was a real shock to him. But anyway, God has been good to us, and He puts things together in His time if we just wait upon the Lord, and He renews your strength. I'll turn it back to my twin.
Praise the Lord. Everything that happens in life, God knows it before it ever happens. And so I really went through a kind of a battle because, Cleveland got married. Then all of a sudden, I felt pretty alone. And then I remember I'd go up this little road from my mother's house. I'd walk across the road, and there's a little dirt road that I'd travel up and pray. That was my prayer place. And I'd go on top of this hill and pray from there. And I'd walk through there, and there's a lady at church said, "Brother Rayborn, I saw you in a dream walking on a little dirt road." And she said, "You look so sad." And you know what that touched me so much about that was to realize that God sees everything that we go through in life. He knows everything. There's nothing about our lives that He doesn't know or care about. He cares about everything that we do. He watches the little birds as they light up on. He knows every one that lights and flies away. He knows all your problems and everything that you go through in life. And He's always with you, never leave you nor forsake you. He said, "I'll be with you even to the ends of the world." So, praise God. And just I'd like to share a little bit of my testimony, my wife. I'll share that in the next section. God bless.